Hello YouTube and welcome back to the garage. So as you can see, the workbench is already paying dividends. Just lifting the bike out a little bit higher off the floor does make everything a little bit easier. So we're going to start today on stripping the bike down. I'm not going to do a full strip, we're just going to take off some of the bits that I definitely know I'm either just going to reuse as they are, or bits that are not going to get reused at all. And so partial strip, and then I'm going to do a trial fit of some of the custom parts or alternative parts that I am going to use, make sure everything's okay before we go for a full strip down, send everything off for powder coat and paint. Now before I start on the strip down, I want to try and do it in a fairly logical way. So what I've got here is I've got my shelves of parts, and I've got various boxes and crates to put things in. This one by far and away the biggest, the yellow one. And I'm going to try and organise it so that we're going to have parts that are going to go into storage because they're not going to be used on this project. Electrical parts are going to go in one of the boxes. Bits that are going to get sent off for powder coat are going to go in this one. And like I said, generally try and keep everything organised because you soon get yourself in a bit of a mess, especially in a small single garage like this. I've also got myself a little pad so that while I'm taking things apart I can inspect them, make notes and make a list of any parts that I need to order, so I can get those on order now rather than have to wait. So let's start off by coming around this side and taking off some of the big items that we know I can just put straight into storage. So seat's loose, we're just going to put that over here, but eventually it's going to go up in the loft, out the way, safekeeping. And then it's the same. As you can see, I've already released them, undone the bolts for this. Again, this is going to go into sent off for paint. Doesn't really need anything doing apart from a good clean before I give it to my friendly painter. And yeah, so we can start taking other bits off. I think the next thing is the fuel tank. Now I've already disconnected the hoses. To be honest, whilst these are pretty rare parts and hard to find, I will probably end up doing something a bit different because I don't really trust old hoses. But for the time being, that can go in the keep it for a later date. As you can see, things are still a tight squeeze, but eventually we'll get the hang of filming it, and I'll sort out slightly better ways of doing things. I'm also going to sort out a better way of supporting the bike. So let's see. So I need an 8mm. Off. Now there is still fuel in the tank, so I'm going to drain that down. Be interesting to see what the fuel comes out like. I don't know how long this sat in Phil's garage before I collected it from him. Okay. The other thing I've got a load of plastic bags, the little zip tie bags, so we can put bits in, label them all up and find them at a later date. Need a bigger bag for fuel tank bits. So whilst I'm at it, I want take the bung out the front, and also there is a rubber tube in the frame that I'll keep together, so I know that everything that I need to refit the tank at a later date is all in one bag, hopefully. Now normally these just pull out, but this one's getting a bit of a pit. There we go. So you can see, got the front and rear fuel tank mounts and the all important rubbers. And again, those go in the box. What else can we take off at this stage? Right, let's get rid of these awful crash guards. Now for the dreaded front engine bolt mounts. Very often these seize in place, so let's keep our fingers crossed and hope they come out all right. I have had a couple of CB-1s where they've actually corroded in place and cracked the front engine mounts. Okay, I think I'm going to have to get a bit brutal on these. Always something. Right. Well, that's a good sign. But as usual, there is signs of quite bad corrosion in there. Let's get a drift. they're not the easiest bolts to get at, these. There you can go. You see, that's fairly typical of what happens. The water gets in here between the bolt and the engine mount and causes it all to corrode. Like I said, we were quite lucky. Those came out relatively easily, but I have had them where yeah, they've actually, the corrosion has been so severe it split the front engine mount. Right. Now those are definitely going in the boxer bits, not used again. Right, I will do the same to the other side and then we will be back. Okay, I think while we're working around the front of the bike, I am going to take the clocks off and the headlight off and gradually work my way back. Of course, this is now where we start having to disconnect all the wiring. Normally I would label everything up, but as this is going to get quite modified, probably isn't necessary in this case. Certainly we're going to get rid of these big chunky indicators, get rid of something a bit more modern looking. Always difficult to find good aftermarket indicators that don't look tacky. I'm sure I'll find something. And of course just put the headlight bowl screws back in. Typically rusty inside, but it doesn't look too bad on the outside. We'll see a bit more when we get it off. Worryingly, there's a Scotch lock in there, so someone's been at the wiring. Always worries me when I see that. To be honest, I don't quite know what they've done. I suspect they've tried to do the Speedo de-restrictor mod by the looks of things. So that's okay. Always amazes me how Honda managed to squeeze so much wiring into headlights. And it's not just the CB-1 that's like this. I had an XBR 500 and that was exactly the same. In fact, if you don't loop it up properly, you'll never ever get the headlight unit back in. Now, be very careful of these headlight retaining bolts. They are unique to the CB-1. I've not found them anywhere else. So for that reason, I'm going to make sure these go back in the headlight bowl. Yeah, there's a bit of pitting on it. I don't think it's going to be good enough to reuse on this project, but it will certainly get used on another CB-1 at some point if needed. Like I said, this one's not going to get reused, but it is going to go into the spares pile along with all the other bits and pieces. The indicators. Way. Let's see if we can get the indicators off. They're usually a bit of fun and games. Wow. I think that's got to be the easiest I've ever had one come off. Okay, so this one's going to be the electrics box. said, I am probably going to fit something a little bit more funky and modern looking. But let's just keep them for the time being. Right, well, although the actual nuts themselves were pretty corroded, they came off pretty easily. Just disconnecting the speedo. And there's the clocks, which unusually are in really good condition. Say unusually for any of the bikes that I normally end up buying. But I've got another project bike that needs a set of clocks, so got a home for those already before any of you message me asking me if I'm going to sell them. What else should we remove next? Well, as we're doing electrics, I suppose we might as well take the rest of the switchgear off, but that is going to be reused. Now you need to loosen off the top yoke bolts, because there are these little retaining brackets that hold cables in place. And whilst I love these folding Allen keys, they're not that great for putting a lot of force on things. But we should be able to. There we go. Right, let's see how we get on with these aftermarket bar ends. They are definitely going in the bin. Well, at least the original inserts are still in the clip-ons, even though the original bar ends aren't. Yeah. Scrap part. I have to say, it is coming apart pretty easily, and it is shocking how few items you need to remove for the bike to suddenly not look like a bike anymore. Ugh. Need a new choke cable, that's pretty frayed. But one of the things I really liked about this bike was the switchgear. You can see it looks almost new. So I don't know whether someone has replaced it with the switchgear off another bike or had it refurbished. But that is definitely going in the reuse pile. Once I put the screws back in the right order. Annoyingly though, someone has cut off the little locating tab. Why do people do that? I think just about every CB-1 I've come across, I've ended up having to put a little metal stud in there to replace the original plastic one. Okay. Muppet. Oh, and then they packed out the clip-on with gaffer tape to try and stop the stop things moving. Okay, I think we'll do the same with the throttle housing. Before I do that, I'm just going to loosen off the clamps for the cables. Now, one of the mods I'm thinking of doing is putting a quick action throttle tube in here, possibly one off an NC23 if it'll fit, or if I have to, I'll replace the whole unit. The problem is, of course, you've got the kill switch and start button and the light switch in here, so if I do that, I'm then going to have to find some more switchgear to work. Now, I could use NC23 switchgear. That's got a kill switch and a start button on a separate little unit, separate from the throttle, and then the actual light switch is on the left-hand switchgear. But like I said, one of the things I wanted to keep on this was the original switchgear because it is in such good nick. It really would be a shame to lose it. It is quite tempting when you're dismantling bikes to take everything off in one hit, but it's often a good idea just to keep things loosely together. It saves you bagging them up, losing them, and then despairing a couple of months down the line. I have to say, compared to the crawling around on the conservatory floor with the NC23, I'm rather enjoying having the bike up on the bench. Okay, so before I can take that off, I'm going to have to take the airbox off to loosen the throttle cables down at the carb end. So I've been looking at the airbox, and worryingly, we're missing there is a screw missing from one end, and the cover actually looks a bit bowed. So let's see what we can find. Again, airboxes are one of those things. I do have a bit of a history of buying bikes with damaged airboxes. Well, now that's good news. Almost new air filter. Now, I don't think I mentioned it in the previous video, but one of the things I do want to do is a stick coil conversion. Anyone familiar with CB-1s will know they have the world's longest ignition leads. The coils are all the way back down here, and underneath the shock. Yeah, not the easiest of things to get to. There we go, one hair box. Certainly the top rubbers don't look too bad. Now the airbox itself looks a little bit misshapen from heat. It hasn't been done up properly in the past, but I'm sure we can sort that. Or it could be that this is a pattern air filter that doesn't fit very well. At the moment, I'm erring towards it being the air filter. Tell you what, let's just do that up loosely for the time being, and we'll investigate that more in the future. Right, put that with the big chunky bits. thinking you're probably not going to see a lot there, but I am just going to loosen off the cables. That's wrong. Again, they're a bit frayed and are going to need replacing at some point. There's our twist grip. Right, that can go in that box. Okay, well, as you can see, the bike's all coming apart quite nicely. I don't really know how much more of this you probably want to watch. So I'm going to call it a day on this video. When we come back, I'll have removed the mud guards, going to drain down the front brake, bleed all, as much of the fluid out as possible, and we're going to take that off, because of course that's getting upgraded. And then I'm going to have a look at the rear end, and start dismantling all the rear end, taking the mud guard, the indicators, pillion pegs and all that off. But yeah, it really is just unbolting stuff at the moment. Not the most exciting of videos, I'm afraid, but we should hopefully get on to the more interesting stuff in the next video. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.